My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home. I'm a better neighbor because my service has taught me how important it is to be a team player. My training helps me in my classes when I give attention to detail to the task at hand. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country safe from threats. Learn more about how you too can live and serve part-time by visiting nationalguard.com.
Sponsored by the California Army National Guard. Aired by the California Broadcasters Association and this station.
1-877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids.
Donate your car today with 1-877 Cars for Kids. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. Also on the web at carsforkids.com.
1-877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today. Now accepting donations of land, homes, buildings, or any kind of real estate.
Whether it's offering curbside or next-day delivery for online orders on over 160,000 parts, or getting involved in their local communities, when it comes to serving you, Napa's motor never quits. That's Napa Know-How.
Find the employees you need to get your business moving. Sign up with iHeartAdBuilder.com and create a custom radio ad to reach job seekers listening to stations just like this one. Get started today at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
I know you've seen all those great home loans being advertised, but you're probably not sure if you qualify, or maybe you've been told, nope, you can't get that low rate. Well, I bet you haven't called IntelliLoan. Right now, IntelliLoan has a 1.99% rate in APR with no points or lender fees for SoCal residents, and this is even if your credit score is as low as 620. It's a 1.99% rate in APR with no points and no lender fees. And you've heard me talk about Daryl, the owner of IntelliLoan. He's got a team of home loan specialists that really want to make this home loan process not suck. They want to make it as hassle-free as possible for you. So call IntelliLoan today at 1-800-918-6200. That's 1-800-918-6200, or just go to IntelliLoan.com.
Rate subject to change without notice. Minimum loan amount requirements apply. 60% loan to value and 620 FICO credit score. Certain restrictions apply. Subject to credit approval. NMLS 3290. Loans made or arranged pursuant to a California Finance Lenders Law license number 6036970. Equal housing lender. IntelliLoan. Borrow smart.
Get sizzling solar savings now with Semper Solaris, your local veteran-owned solar and battery storage contractor. Being veteran-owned matters. Here's veteran, founder, and owner Kelly Shawhan.
In the military, when you give your word, it just is your word. Work hard and keep your word. That's what we do every single day. Everybody did exactly what they said they were going to do, and that really impressed me. I've heard about Semper Solaris and found out that they were veterans, so I knew they were going to do the job right.
Declare your energy independence. Choose solar panels made in America. We get the job done right with esprit de corps and honor. Add Tesla Powerwall and prepare for blackouts. Grab the federal 26% solar and battery tax credit. No interest or payments until 2022. Call 877-211-5591. 877-211-5591. Or visit SemperSolaris.com.
26% federal tax credit based on eligibility. Consult your tax advisor. Cannot be combined with any other offers on approved credit. New customers only. Some restrictions apply. Expires 6/30/2021. CSLP number 978152.
Hi, it's insert talent name here. You already know that when you have the free iHeart app, you can bring along Please Mention KFI and thousands of other stations just like this one with you anytime, anywhere, on any device, okay? And now with the iHeart app, you could be one of the first to win a trip to the iconic iHeart Music Festival in Las Vegas. Simply download the free iHeart app and search Win to enter. iHeart #1 with music, radio, podcasts, all in one app. Okay, let's do this.
Good morning, everyone. This is KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Don't forget that you can catch KFI everywhere at any time on the iHeartRadio app. My name is Oscar Ramirez, and I'm the host of The Daily Dive, the daily news podcast covering some of the top stories making waves in the news. You can catch a new episode of The Daily Dive Monday through Friday on iHeartRadio, and it's ready for you when you wake up. Here on The Daily Dive Weekend Edition, I'll be bringing you some of the best stories I covered during the week. Big political news this week. President Biden and Vladimir Putin had their much-anticipated summit on Wednesday, and both walked away saying that the meeting was positive and constructive. President Biden said he pressed Putin on recent cyber attacks and human rights issues. They did agree on their ambassadors to return to their posts, begin strategic stability talks on nuclear arms, and consultations on cybersecurity issues. For more of the big takeaways, we'll speak to Nahal Tusi, Foreign Affairs Correspondent at Politico.
The gist of it was that they kind of agreed to keep talking, and given that the Russian-U.S. relationship is in such a bad situation and on a downward trajectory, simply the fact that they, first of all, talked and B, agreed to keep talking on certain things is considered something of a win. In terms of what emerged, I would say two things. One was this agreement to continue discussions on what they use the term strategic stability. That usually refers to like nuclear arms issues. So there's going to be continued discussions on that. And that's a good thing for people who want the Earth to continue to exist, I guess.
Right.
And then the other thing was, that Biden said he made it very clear to Putin that there have to be some limits on these cyber attacks, especially when it comes to critical infrastructure like water systems, that sort of thing. And he made it sound like he, got that across to Putin, and that he hopes that at some point down the line there can be some sort of a cybersecurity arrangement of sorts that, deals with this particular issue. And to be clear, it often involves criminals that don't have anything to do with the Kremlin. It's more about making sure that Russia will hold people accountable for those types of activities, even if it's not directed by the Kremlin. And obviously, we don't want the Kremlin to carry out those activities, and I think the U.S., Biden made it very clear that, as he put it, like, the U.S. has some serious cyber capabilities. Would you like it if we did that to you? So those are, I would say, two things. And then they're going to talk about a bunch of other stuff from Afghanistan to Syria to whatever. But he himself, Biden, admitted that it would be months before we knew if anything seriously concrete was going to result from that.
President Biden gave Putin a list of 16 entities that were critical to U.S. infrastructure that he said should be off limits. And Putin, for his part, did say, we want to start some consultations on the cybersecurity issue. Not necessarily something that President Biden said, but it did seem like, I guess, the message came across, but he never accepted responsibility for it anyway. I mean, he believed that they should be faulted for some of these cyber attacks that were going through.
Yeah, in fact, Putin claimed without any evidence that most cyber attacks come from the United States, that this is where all the criminals are based. I mean, look, he is never going to stand up there and say, oh, yeah, we did something wrong or we're responsible. I mean, that is just not how Vladimir Putin stays in power. That is not how he controls the narrative for his own domestic constituency. But, that's just it. But that doesn't mean that they won't work on certain fronts, especially if the U.S. makes it very, very clear, as Biden tried to do, that it's in their interest to work on some sort of an arrangement on this. And it's part of the problem, to be honest, when it comes to the cyber stuff, is so much of it is classified and behind the scenes, and not to mention highly technical, that it's really hard to tell when there is actually progress or not, because oftentimes they just can't talk about it, and especially in Washington. So it's one of those things that's going to be hard to monitor.
This summit was a far cry from the last one that happened between former President Trump and Helsinki. Putin, for his part, said that President Biden was a balanced, professional man. He's clearly a very experienced politician. President Biden was fielding questions whether he could trust Vladimir Putin. He said, it's not about trust, it's about our country's self-interest. I told him what America needs out of our ongoing relationship.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is normal, foreign policy is like every country has its own interests, and you're trying to advance your country's interests. And so Biden has a very realistic point of view on that. And Putin said something similar about, like, this is our national interest, that sort of thing. Although, when it comes to Putin, people will argue it's his self-interest. He cares more about the Russian population as a whole. But, the way Biden also kind of spun it, and I found this super interesting, was it was sort of like, wow, nice country you got there. It would be a shame if anything happened to it, right? And but it was this way of doing it. He was like, look, I was telling Putin, like, wow, how would you feel if someone attacked your energy pipelines, or how would if you want to have more trade between Russia and other countries, maybe you shouldn't keep imprisoning American businessmen. It was this whole idea of, like, kind of help me help you. But you could also see it as a veiled threat. So,
right, exactly.
So that was kind of how Biden tried to spin it. And I mean, Putin's an old hand at this stuff, and it's hard to say if he fell for that. But sanctions, other means, if he feels like talks aren't going to work, if he uses these other things and really, really imposes a cost on Putin and the people around him, the oligarchs in particular, then it could start to hurt and Putin could start to make some moves.
There was a tense moment during his press conference. They had solo press conferences where he got a little combative with a reporter. He, later on, before getting on the plane, he actually came back and said sorry for being a wise guy and apologized for it, something we hadn't seen in a long time. So overall, how did he fare throughout this?
Well, his assessment was, quote, I did what I needed to do. So he seemed quite confident in how he did. It's never a good idea to get into a fight with the White House press corps, even if the question being asked is really, really frustrating to you. Biden, the reporter asked, why are you so confident that Putin will change his behavior? And Biden was kind of like exasperated. He was like, I never said that. And he didn't ever say that. He never said he thinks Putin didn't do anything. So he was just kind of frustrated, I think, at the end and got his facts. And he did apologize, which you're right, we haven't seen that in a long time, given the Trump years. But overall, again, he seemed quite happy in how he did. But let's not forget, they set the bar pretty low on this. They've warned us in advance, don't expect any major agreements, whatever, and they've met that very low bar.
Nahal Tusi, Foreign Affairs Correspondent at Politico, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This week we also saw a new study done by the National Institutes of Health showing that in 5 states, some people were infected with COVID-19 before those states officially recorded their first cases. Blood samples collected between January and March of 2020 were tested for antibodies. Out of 24,000 samples, 9 came back positive. And while these cases were earlier than previously recorded, it doesn't show that there was much community spread at the time. For more on this, we'll speak to Betsy McKay, senior writer at the Wall Street Journal.
So the NIH has a big research program that you and listeners may have heard of called the All of Us Research Program, and its goal is to enroll 1 million people across the country of diverse backgrounds, and through the database that they build from that, to study risk factors for disease and treatments and so forth. They're building this big database of blood samples and so forth from people, volunteers who enroll. So what they decided to do is use the blood samples that they have collected so far to look at this kind of growing question of interest. How early did the pandemic reach U.S. shores? When did people first start getting sick? Because we know the first person to be, formally diagnosed was in late January, around January 19th, but that was right after a test became available. So the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, developed a test. It's made, available in its lab, and boom, 2 days later, someone has this. So that raises the question of, well, are they really the first person or not? So these researchers went through and tested blood samples going back to the beginning of January.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about how COVID was floating around earlier than we thought.
Neil Saavedra here. About 3 years ago, my wife and I called American Vision Windows. They installed gorgeous French doors for us, changed the flow of our home, added architectural appeal. The next project they're doing are kitchen windows. We can't wait. Their work is meticulous. It's outstanding. I recommended them to my brother, Craig, and now he and his family have a lovely window-encased patio, added 150 sunny square feet to their home. We all know Bill and Kathleen's story. They had a horrible experience replacing their own windows. They started their own company. Fast forward 20 years later, they continue to beautify homes like mine with personal care, complete professionalism, and attention. CSLB number 778326. Give you and your home the gift of light, warmth, and beauty. Trust the window company my family trusts. American Vision Windows. You'll see the difference. Call American Vision Windows today for that free estimate, 888-226-9908. That's 888-226-9908. Or for specials, visit AmericanVisionWindows.com.
Thinking of buying a house and want a really low interest rate? Owning has a special for home purchases, where Owning pays all your closing costs, and the rate in APR is an unheard of 1.875% for a 15-year fixed mortgage with 20% down. This is the craziest low rate for a mortgage with no closing costs that Owning has ever done. 1.875% rate in APR. Heck, we're almost paying you to live in a new house. Call 833-2-OWNING or go to owning.com to see if you qualify for this crazy low 1.875% rate. That's a fixed rate loan at 1.875% with no closing costs. Call 833-2-OWNING now because 1.875 could go away at any time.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Subject to credit approval. Offer assumes the use of Lender's Choice Escrow and Title Services. Call 833-858-0066 for terms and conditions.
That's 833-2-OWNING or owning.com. 833-2-OWNING or owning.com.
Contractor license 1047-781.
$129 will make a world of difference in the efficiency of your air conditioner because just $129 is all it costs to have one of my genius Gettle technicians come to your home and perform a complete system rejuvenation.
We're going to clean and adjust your air conditioner
and make 6 critical adjustments to bring it back to factory specs.
Rejuvenation reduces breakdowns and makes sure AC lasts longer.
A lot longer.
Rejuvenation!
And we'll clean the coils the right way, not the easy way.
You do not want to face Ken Goodrich if he finds out you did it the easy way.
You can't imagine how much difference it makes when the coils have been cleaned the right way. 6 critical adjustments and external coil cleaning the right way. Kenny and the boys are going to make your air conditioner sing like paparazzi.
I think you mean Pavarotti.
Yeah, him too.
Gettle. Goettl. We're the ones to call.
But it's hard to spell.
Hey, it's Dean Sharp. You know, one of the things I can never get enough of is talking directly to you. So this weekend, we have pushed everything aside and are taking nothing but your calls. You pick the topic, you set the agenda. It's an all-calls weekend on Home.
Home with Dean Sharp, the House Whisperer, this morning at 9 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. Out of 24,000, a little over 24,000 participants, they found evidence of infection in just 9 people. That suggests a number of different things. What they did find, though, also is that in 5 states, Illinois, Massachusetts, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, they had people that showed evidence of infection, and that was all before anybody had gotten in those first states. Big areas like California and New York, there were no infections that turned up, at least in these blood samples.
What they found was that people, they looked at blood samples going back into early January, and what they were looking for was antibodies in the blood. These are blood samples that were taken at the time, and then they're frozen and stored for research later. So the researchers go back, they test the blood for antibodies using 2 different tests to make sure that it really is the COVID-19 virus called SARS-CoV-2 and not something else. So they found, one person on January 7th, one person on January 8th, and that the antibodies they found normally start to appear about 2 weeks after someone is infected. So that means those 2 people, one in Illinois and one in Massachusetts, were likely infected around December 24th or maybe a little bit earlier. Then they went later in time through March, and 24,000 samples, as you said. We only found 9 cases. So what that shows is that certainly the virus was here earlier than we knew before, and a couple of studies have shown that now. But it wasn't, not in large numbers. I mean, these were kind of like sporadic cases, and that happens often with infectious diseases. Something that causes an outbreak. There's a few cases here, a case here, a case there, and then eventually something takes hold and it starts to spread. But until then, there are these cases that are missed.
One of the limitations in this study, and something that they wanted to look back into a little bit more, was that they don't really show travel history for these people, these 9 people that did have those infections. So I think they wanted to dig in a little bit more to see if they had traveled to China or contact with anybody from there around that time also.
There's very little actually known about these people and how they might have gotten infected. What this means is, looking back to that period, if you had some symptoms, the chances are that no, you didn't have COVID, but these aren't the only 9 people, right? I mean, they may have spread it to 1 or 2 other people. There are other people who may have had this and, weren't involved in this study, but it wasn't in such large numbers that it would have been noticed, that a hospital would have started noticing they were getting a lot of patients with the same strange symptoms. So it just wasn't big enough at the time.
Yeah, and so we got this new data that I know you mentioned in the article. There was another study that had similar results in just showing that obviously we didn't have the COVID test ready to go when we started seeing the first inklings of it. So it was kind of expected that we were going to see some of these other infections floating around earlier than some of these first confirmed cases.
When the test first became available in January, because there weren't a lot of tests and there weren't a lot of labs that could do it, and then later, because there was a problem with the test, the public health authorities focused testing on people who had been to China or another country where there was COVID-19 spreading. So you and others may remember this. People who, in February of 2020 thought they had COVID-like symptoms, but they hadn't traveled anywhere and they, hadn't had contact with anyone who was known to have COVID-19, literally couldn't get a test. Now what we know is there were other people. You didn't have to travel to China, and there were people who weren't terribly ill. So the point, or one of the points here, is the importance of having a test that's widely available and not restricting your criteria for the test. That anybody with symptoms or who may have had contact should be able to get a test rather than limiting it to somebody who was in a place where the disease was spreading.
Betsy McKay, senior writer at the Wall Street Journal, thank you very much for joining us.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Even as more parts of the country continue to fully reopen from the pandemic, you're still going to see what many are calling hygiene theater. Think plexiglass dividers, scanning QR codes for menus, and the constant cleaning of surfaces, despite surface contact not being a significant transmitter of the virus. These actions have much more to do with making customers feel better than it does with science. For more on how long hygiene theater may last, we'll speak to Mark Fisher, senior editor at the Washington Post.
What we're seeing is that in some places we are moving back towards normal. In other places, businesses, public facilities, entertainment venues, all kinds of places like that are kind of caught in the middle because on the one hand, they want to open up, they want to give people a feeling of normalcy. On the other hand, they know that some of their customers are still very nervous about going out. They don't want to think they won't be safe. And so a lot of adopting precautions that really aren't scientifically merited. So you talked about things that bars against touching things, this sort of heavy disinfecting of surfaces that we saw in the early months of the lockdown. There are transit systems and theaters and other public facilities that are still doing that, even though they know that the virus is not transmitted by touch. So why are they still doing it? Well, there are two big reasons. One is they're doing it to make their customers feel more comfortable, and the other is they're doing it to save money. They're doing some of these things to save money. So they're, for example, at restaurants, it's hard at some restaurants to get a printed menu anymore. You have to aim your camera on the phone and pull up the QR code and pull up a digital menu. Well, that was initially done to make people feel more comfortable and to stop the spread, but now that's no longer valid scientifically. It's often being done to save money.
Right, and the question comes now, what will stick? What's going to stay with us after things fully reopen? And you were talking to some people about all of this, and one of the big pushes for getting vaccinated was everything is going to go back to normal, right? But with these things persisting, it tends to degrade that customer experience. You can't move around as freely as you wanted to before. You still have plexiglass up and everything. So I kind of agree in that sense that it's still, all these barriers are kind of off-putting. But a lot of it, as you mentioned, has to do with psychology. It makes customers feel more comfortable.
It puts business owners in a really tough spot because on the one hand, they don't want to alienate their customers who just want to feel more comfortable, feel safer. And so they want to keep up some of those precautions to communicate the sense that the business is taking this very seriously. I talked to some business owners who said, well, we're keeping the temperature checks because it gives people that feeling of comfort. I think eventually much of this goes away, but there's a really cautionary tale in the aftermath of 9/11. And if you think about all the things that have become a permanent part of the landscape, from showing an ID card in the lobby of an office building to some of the restrictions at airports, a lot of these precautions, once they're put in place, it's awfully hard to take them away.
You mentioned in the article, too, that a lot of Americans that want this kind of clear rules about how things are going to go forward, but there'll probably be a little more disappointment in the coming months as the reopenings are so uneven. Everybody's kind of all over the place, and obviously businesses for themselves, they don't want to get caught in something, and an outbreak happen, and then they're held liable. So there's going to be a lot of this kind of one rule set, maybe taking it back, this jockeying back and forth is going to happen for a few months at least.
I think that's right, and probably at least through next winter, we're going to see the same kind of back and forth that we just saw, for example, from Southwest Airlines, where first they said they were going to resume serving alcohol on their flight, and then just days later they scrapped that plan because they saw how poorly some passengers were behaving in the air these days. So there's going to be a back and forth. We're seeing it in hotels, we're seeing it in transit systems. And I think one of the main places we'll be seeing it is in entertainment venues, in bars and restaurants, in concert halls, movie theaters. They really are caught. They don't know exactly what they can safely let go of. And yet I hear from a lot of people that they're just ticked off by some of these restrictions. For example, at Nationals Park, the baseball stadium here in D.C., they put in these touchless dispensers for the condiments, replacing the old bins where you could kind of reach in and get a spoonful of onions to put on your hot dog. They replaced that with these machines that put down a huge plop of ketchup or mustard when you waved your hand under it. And fans went crazy. They said they didn't know how to operate it, and it was ruining their hot dogs because there was too much stuff coming out of the machine. And so finally the team said, okay, forget it. We won't do the touchless thing anymore. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth.
It's up to, in all of these cases, it's our local public health experts who are making these decisions without some type of big national rule or something. It really is going to be being done at the local level. And
even at the individual business level, I talked to some folks from the National Restaurant Association, and they're telling their members, hey, you can go back to printed menus, you don't have to do the temperature checks. And yet many of their members are deciding to kind of violate that recommendation and go ahead and continue to have those restrictions, in part sometimes because they don't have the staff that they had before the pandemic. And so they don't have somebody who can rewrite the menus and print them out, and they don't want to pay for that. So it's going to be a mix of motives here. It's not just about safety. It's not just about curbing the spread of the virus. It's also about what these individual businesses that have been hit so hard can afford going forward.
Mark Fisher, Senior Editor at the Washington Post, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition on KFI AM 640 and everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. I'll be back with some more top stories from the week, but first, let's get an update from the KFI newsroom.
KFI, news on the hour, on the half, and when it breaks.
I'm Brian Berman from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. A deputy in the IE has been placed on administrative leave following a high-speed chase.
A deputy in Victorville is seen on security footage kicking a suspect in the head after a high-speed chase. The chase ended up the wrong way on the 15 freeway. The suspect dumped his motorcycle shortly after exiting the I-15. Police found the suspect in a nearby parking lot. On camera, the suspect, Willie Jones, is seen getting on the ground obeying commands by the deputy when he's kicked in the head.
The deputy involved in this incident was immediately taken off duty and placed on administrative leave.
In a video on social media, San Bernardino County Undersheriff Shannon Dykes said the incident will be submitted to the district attorney's office. Andrew Caravella, KFI News.
Even as COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted around the state, LA County health officials are asking people to be careful celebrating Father's Day. They're advising you to stay outdoors, wear masks, and practice social distancing at gatherings. SoCal weather from KFI brought to you by Discover. Sunny skies across LA in the afternoon for Father's Day. We lead local from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Brian Berman.
Still have some trouble in Claremont this morning. The 10 eastbound before Indian Hill Boulevard. A crash blocks the 3 right lanes. You're stopped from Town Avenue. Making your way through Gliselle Park on the 2 northbound at San Fernando Road. A crash blocks that on-ramp. And if you're headed through Mission Hills on the 405 southbound at Devonshire, a crash is off to the center divider. Van Nuys 405 northbound at Sherman Way heads up here for a crash on the shoulder. And in Downey, the 5 southbound after Florence, disabled vehicle blocks the right lane. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Dave Joseph.
Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover is accepted at 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report limitations apply.
I know you've seen all those great home loans being advertised, but you're probably not sure if you qualify. Or maybe you've been told, nope, you can't get that low rate. Well, I bet you haven't called IntelliLoan. Right now, IntelliLoan has a 1.99% rate in APR with no points or lender fees for SoCal residents, and this is even if your credit score is as low as 620. It's a 1.99% rate in APR with no points and no lender fees. And you've heard me talk about Daryl, the owner of IntelliLoan. He's got a team of home loan specialists that really want to make this home loan process not suck. They want to make it as hassle-free as possible for you. So call IntelliLoan today at 1-800-918-6200. That's 1-800-918-6200, or just go to IntelliLoan.com.
Rates subject to change without notice. Minimum loan amount requirements apply. 60% loan to value and 620 FICO credit score. Certain restrictions apply. Subject to credit approval. NMLS 3290. Loans made or arranged pursuant to a California Finance Lenders Law License number 6036970. Equal housing lender. IntelliLoan. Borrow smart.
Whether it's offering curbside or next-day delivery for online orders on over 160,000 parts, or getting involved in their local communities, when it comes to serving you, Napa's Motor never quits. That's Napa know-how.
Find the employees you need to get your business moving. Sign up with iHeartAdBuilder.com and create a custom radio ad to reach job seekers listening to stations just like this one. Get started today at iHeartAdBuilder.com.
1877 cars for kids. K-A-R-S cars for kids. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today. Donate online at carsforkids.com. That's cars with a K. Pickup is quick and easy. You'll get a vacation voucher and maximum tax deduction. 1877 cars for kids. Donate your car today.
Also accepting real estate donations.
KFI AM 640.
An iHeart radio station.
24-hour news. More stimulating talk.
This is KFI AM 640, heard everywhere in the iHeart Radio app. I'm Oscar Ramirez, and you're listening to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. Lately, as more people have been taking to the skies, we've been seeing a lot of bad behavior on airplanes. Disruptions by passengers due to alcohol, and especially the refusal to wear masks, has been on the rise. For more on the rise of conflicts in the air, we'll speak to Hannah Sampson, travel reporter at the Washington Post.
I mean, there's a lot of kind of, I think, small acts of defiance where people are refusing to wear their masks, which is, a federal mandate right now on planes. But too often, those conflicts are really escalating and turning into shouting obscenities, shoving. As you said, in the Southwest case, somebody took a swing at a flight attendant and reportedly knocked out a couple of teeth. And the Delta incident that you mentioned, several passengers and flight attendants had to physically subdue a passenger who was being disruptive, and that's not even the first time that scenario has unfolded. So it really is kind of running the gamut, but it all kind of adds up to a situation that experts are saying is just kind of like unprecedented in terms of bad behavior in the skies.
I do want to focus on the mask just a little bit more.